make it look like it's magic, 'cause I see nobody but you. I'm never confused. Hey, I'm so used to being.
Whoop. You know, I got to work on the fade outs, Charles. It's always all this stuff and then the music just cuts.
That's right.
Happy Sunday, Charles.
Great.
And happy July.
My goodness.
July 1st.
July 1st. I was walking up 7th Avenue and at the corner of 14th Street, not half an hour ago or so, there were 3 people with a skillet. And they put the skillet on top of a manhole cover and they actually were frying an egg.
That's
Why
crazy.
they were doing this is beyond me. But
Well, it's possibly just a demonstration of skillet skills. Could be. Now, Charles, there's a couple things I wanted to talk about before we get into the presentation for today. You know, it's only the second Sunday with Charles that we're back with live streaming on the main Crowdsource the Truth channel, and I've brought back the 90 Seconds with Charles Ortel segment. I've also been experimenting on the 21st Century 3D YouTube channel, doing live streams on both. So the reason I'm doing that is because I wanted to activate Super Chat on 21st Century 3D, and I believe if people are watching, well, see, I don't have it perfectly worked out yet, so we don't have our graphic here and everything, but people are right now watching on 21st Century 3D. We've got 18 people, and if people want to get into Super Chat on there, whoops, see, it's a mystery how it's working exactly, but people who understand Super Chat, oh, look at that. It's an experiment, but that's a thing for people to...
multimedia.
Multimedia experiment for people to try out if they want to get into Super Chat. The reason I did that, Charles, is because, you know, we're really trying to keep Crowdsource the Truth going, and as you have explained to me, it's important that we let the audience know about the business model. And I mean, I remember from my days doing corporate presentations with 21st Century 3D, working with big ad agencies and corporate promotional firms, executives with much more experience than I used to always say, if you don't ask for the business specifically, you're never going to get it. So
That's true.
I've been making an effort of trying to let the Crowdsource community know there's so many new people joining all the time. We're at almost 61,000 subscribers on YouTube, but we're not using any monetization other than that small test of Super Chat on 21st Century 3D. We're really trying to distribute the sponsorship over our many thousands of viewers. We're at about 430 right now, which is great, but we really need people to become sponsors on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And that money is being used for travel and the day-to-day expenses of running the operation. And I think people have been very pleased with the presentations with Kevin Shipp, etc. Obviously, we know that Tuesday is Imran Awan's plea hearing, and it's going to be very important to me to go there and speak to Imran, and I want to speak to my good friend Chris Gowan, ask him how all the Diet Coke deliveries for Bill Clinton are going.
Maybe you should bring him a Diet Coke.
That's a good idea. I'll bring a Diet Coke to the hearing and we'll see what Chris Gowan has to say. But I mean, there's, as always, a ton of stuff going on in the news. We're going to be talking about how clear it is, these felonies, these crimes. The presentations with Kevin Shipp blew me away. He really has a great PowerPoint thing put together, dovetails off a lot of the material that you've brought to the fore, and he even goes into some of the more sort of, you know, he's a CIA alumni that has a lot of insight into how these secret agencies work. He talks about how the Clinton Foundation was actually a financial conduit between the deep state and the shadow government, and his distinction between those two entities really opened my eyes to a lot of the subtleties of how these problems come about.
Great, great. Well, I did watch most of the 2-hour Kevin Shipp video, and I'd highly recommend it to those who have not yet seen it. I forget the title exactly, Jason, but it's up on Crowdsource the Truth. I know
Yes.
that.
Yes. I'll bring that up.
well worth taking the time to not necessarily go all through it in one go, because it's so long and so interesting that you might break it in half or something, watch an hour, then watch the second hour. But it's really very, very well done. This guy knows what he's talking about.
Absolutely.
And yet another not so flattering picture of Hillary.
Well, I selected that. This is another persistent issue with YouTube. I guess we are live right now, but anytime you watch, it says that I'm live. So there's actually 3 separate videos with Kevin Shipp. There was a pre-interview, there's his PowerPoint presentation, which is this Clinton Foundation financial conduit between the deep state and shadow government. And he really goes through and talks about how the military industrial corporatocracy that includes the technocratic world that we're all living in, that is the deep state, according to Kevin, and the shadow government is sort of what we see Hillary and Barack Obama doing, in that they're going around the world disparaging President Trump, trying to undermine the actual government. And it's quite interesting to see how Kevin details all that activity.
Well worth doing.
Yeah. So, with that, Charles, we should perhaps get into our normal presentation, shall we?
Sure, yeah, let's start with the art department. Once again, I noticed this because I've now seen enough of your work, the subtleties of the black and effing white. I love the different fonts in the background, they're well done. But the point of this, and I don't know if the music came through or not, but the music we played is a very haunting song that I had heard without knowing it was connected to the movie 50 Shades of Grey. And the title of that song is Earned It.
Yeah.
And it's all about what you have to do in this crazy, twisted world of sadomasochism to earn the right to be screwed, which is basically the hallmark of the Clintons. You're earning the right to be screwed by the Clintons. You get contributions into their various fake charities, and they turn around and screw you. That's basically what they do.
Yeah.
And they've been able to get away with this for the longest possible time, because instead of trying to go and steal $1,000, which if you do that and you get caught, you can go to prison for stealing $1,000. These people say, yeah, we want to steal billions, and we want to create the largest set of global frauds in modern or in world history ever, and we want to get everybody involved in it such that nobody can take us down. And that's in essence what these people have done until Trump happened.
Yes.
And so what we want to try to do in this presentation, we're going to get somewhat into the weeds on certain points, but we're going to make a high-level case as to why this obvious fraud needs to be taken down yesterday. And before we get into those details, where I think Trump may be missing something here, maybe not, is that the rhythm of life now, July and August, many people will be on vacation. And then there are scant days until 60 days before the election, the so-called unofficial 60-day rule.
Right.
So what I believe the various parties who are trying to obstruct this takedown of the Clinton, Obama, Bush fraud complex, what they're trying to do is run the clock out and hope that they can pull off an upset in November 2018 that they didn't pull off in November 2016, and by pulling that upset off, they'll just cripple Trump. That's what they're going for here. They're trying to cripple Donald Trump's ability, his IRS, his Justice Department, to actually prosecute these Clinton Foundation and Obama Foundation and related frauds.
Right.
So we're running out of time, and it's high time that I think the president step it up. And I know he is. He's doing a lot. He's working on lots of things at once, but. We learned, and we talked about it last week, that the Inspector General confirmed the FBI investigation began in January of 2016. That's 2.5 years ago.
The investigation of the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah, the FBI investigation of the Clinton Foundation began, the most recent one, January 2016. And we see in the case of Manafort, when the FBI and the special prosecutor, or in this case, the special counsel, or whatever he's called, when they want to go aggressive against a target, we see how that works. You get raided at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. They don't say, well, please may I negotiate with you as to what I might be able to get from your lawyers. No, they take everything.
Yeah.
And so that's, on the one hand, how an aggressive prosecution works. Now we know in the case of this Clinton Foundation, which is an obvious set of frauds, that it took the FBI until January of 2016 to open an investigation. 2.5 years, what have they got? We know the IRS considered opening an investigation by late July 2016, so that's also another 2 years of work. And I implore Donald Trump, I implore the US attorneys, I implore the foreign governments to get off a dime here and push indictments across the line. Because we're going to lay out a scenario here where this thing can come crashing down quickly if you follow the course we're going to suggest today.
I can't wait for that to happen, Charles.
All right, speaking of that, so if we go to the
absolutely
next first page here, this is really a story that, as we've been talking about before, that begins latest by sometime in 1988, maybe before then, when George H.W. Bush and the Democrats who love, the fellow members of the Uniparty, decided to promote this unregulated globalism. And that's something they're promoting heavily and officially since 1988. They have made what they would believe is a lot of progress. They've nurtured several generations of students into believing that this globalism makes more sense than promoting excellence in individual nations. They've, I think, cluttered the minds of countless students, countless professors, countless think tank people. Forget the mainstream media, they're cluttered to begin with.
I have a question from a cluttered mind.
All right.
When you say unregulated globalism, what exactly does that mean versus regulated globalism?
So if you had, there's no global taxing power, right? There's no authority that can go and say from some government jurisdiction, we have the power in this globalist taxing authority to land on Jason Goodman and bring you to justice for a tax fraud. There's nobody who can do that. And
on a global level.
On a global level. So, and there's no global justice department, right? So if you're a powerful GE, for example, what you do is you say, I'm a multinational. You can't bother me with these mere American laws. I'm a multinational. I'm above all that.
So you could choose what country to do your crime in based on where the law is favorable to not prosecuting you. Is that it?
Right. It's sort of like the same thing was the case in America. If you think about as America took shape, if you're out in a territory that's not governed by Washington, D.C., you're out there lawless land, the government may tolerate, the national government may tolerate criminal behavior in the territory if it suits the national power. But there's no effective way of really bringing somebody to justice in this territory because there's no government. And that's basically what's going on with this unregulated globalism. On the one hand, you have no real checks and balances on the multinational players. And on the other hand, the second you create a global market, a global set of business opportunities, you create the chance to make a lot more money than you can just make inside one country. So the temptation to make vast profits is greater. The fact that there is no regulation means that you can get away with a lot more. So if you talk about inequality, this globalist approach of unregulated globalism basically only increases the inequality between the very rich and the poor who are locked down in these failing countries around the world.
Well, it also would seem from the reports that we've been doing that it allows the very rich to specifically take advantage of these poorer countries and maybe do their operations from there, in there, and avoid the laws of the more powerful countries. Right,
and what's, it's a fact, and there's not much we can do about it at the moment. It's good for all Americans. The U.S. economy is so much larger, the internal economy is so much larger than any other national economy that the U.S. doesn't necessarily need to play in a globalist bureaucracy. We could just say, we're not really that dependent on trade. You want to try to punish us, then we'll lock you out of access to the biggest market in the world.
Take our toys and go home.
Yeah, and by the way, we also seem to have a pretty powerful military. So, I think what we're seeing here, at least for me, is I remember when the wall came down, when China opened up, I remember thinking, this is really great. We're going to move. America's going to maybe, and the West will offer the rest of the world the best of what we can bring to the table. And we will try, back then I would argue in '88, the U.S. wasn't that corrupt, in theory. In theory.
H.W. was the president.
No, he wasn't.
Oh, Reagan was.
Right.
Well, yeah, he was.
Anyway, but the point is, compared to '88, I would argue this country is a lot more corrupt today than it used to be.
I agree with that.
And you know, instead of going towards a system of law and order where the rules are understood, where everyone has equal opportunity, where there is where there are grown-ups disciplining things, we spent, I would argue, certainly under Clinton 8 years, H.W. Bush 4 years, W. Bush 8 years, Obama 8 years, we destroyed all that. And so the big play here is not pesky meddling in the 2016 election, which I doubt really happened between Russia and Trump, but which I strongly suspect happened between intelligence services that are threatened by a Donald Trump presidency and the various governments and corrupt government leaders who were threatened by the possibility of the Clinton Foundation being exposed.
Yeah.
They definitely meddled in the 2016 election and in the resistance movement afterwards. And that's the real story here that I think needs to get told. And I think Americans across the political spectrum, people on the left, the Berniacs are very much against deep state activities. People on the right are, generally speaking, I would characterize them as being willing to trust government, when they're in charge, and they can fall victim to this theory, well, if you don't have anything to hide, you really shouldn't be nervous about a surveillance state. That's certainly not the way I think.
I agree.
And I think it's time to, I think there would be common ground. Forget Maxine Waters and that idiot Michael Moore and these other people. I mean, forget those people. Decent Americans understand the economy's better off under Trump. The deep state experiment, certainly since September 11th, 2001, has been an unmitigated disaster.
Yeah.
This idea that, the deep state can say, well, we can't even tell you all the catastrophes we saved you from by this deep state.
Right.
You're not grown up enough to understand the perils that we saved you from. That argument's baloney.
Right. Incidentally, with regard to Maxine Waters, I'm personally getting ready for a UFC bout between Laura Loomer and Maxine
That would
Waters.
be funny.
That would be great. And also, I just wanted to say, Kevin Shipp, one of the things that he said, out of the many things that blew my mind, was that the Uranium One deal, according to Kevin, was a Russian intelligence operation. So that's fascinating for people to dig into there.
So the one high-level point to take away from this is we've gone over and over in minutia because our original efforts were targeted towards the prosecutors, towards the accountants, towards the people who are really into detail. But if we take a big step back and accept a few premises, one is that if you want to be tax exempt, you can only be a tax exempt entity if you have specific, limited purposes that are defined in your articles of incorporation, right? We take a big step back again from this mess and we say, what were the only tax exempt purposes of the Clinton Foundation? They were to build a complex in Little Rock, Arkansas, to house the presidential records created during Bill's 2 terms, and to have a research center and to have an endowment. And to be fair to them, we can argue that that complex and the endowment, let's say, cost $150 million. I will demonstrate later that in other presentations that it's far less than $150 million that they actually spent.
Oh wow, because you've
right.
already shown a comparison to another construction project that showed it was very hard to imagine it being.
Right, but let's use $150 million just to be very generous to the Clintons, in a generous mood on July 1st.
Okay.
Because I think we're days, hopefully weeks away from them being indicted. So they raise, we're going to show you, they have so far raised in declared documents that they've submitted to the public domain, they've raised $2.9 billion for a charity that was supposed to spend $150 million on a complex in Little Rock. It's that simple. What the hell did they do with the other $2.75 billion?
Booze and parties, man.
I think those banquets are expensive, but I mean, it's not more complicated than that. If the Clinton Foundation was supposed to be fighting HIV/AIDS and supposed to be doing climate change and supposed to be doing all this other stuff, why didn't they amend their articles of incorporation to clearly set forth, as is required under state, federal, and foreign laws, those amended purposes? The reason they didn't do that is because they started doing all this stuff without telling anybody, right? And you can't do that. The IRS is very clear. If you want to get permission to expand your charter, you have to go to them first before you do anything different and say, hey, you know, I've done a great job. Oh, wait a minute, I've done a crappy job, you know, constructing this trailer park, spending far more than it should have cost. And, you know, now because I've done such a crappy job and I got topless, you know, teenagers running around this roof garden that, you know, shouldn't have been put up in the first place.
Why is the roof garden bad again?
Well, when you calculate how much, getting in a little bit into the weeds, but they are on the roof, when you calculate how much you have to pay by way of an endowment, the square footage matters. In the calculation, the original calculation of how much was going to be private and how much was going to be the foundation and how much was going to go to the archives, this entire roof, which is now usable by Bill Clinton only, was counted as 0 square foot.
Huh.
So if you add these new into the picture, they owe more money to the National Archives.
Wow.
And query, you know, whoever said the former president of the United States is entitled to have a 5,000 square foot penthouse apartment with a however many, I think it's over 10,000 square foot usable roof garden with a putting green or whatever else they have up here. Ed Klein was saying there's a swimming pool up there somewhere. I don't.
So this is personal apartment for Bill Clinton.
It's not supposed to be.
And all this joking we've been doing about it being a mini golf course, et cetera, like, what has he got going on here? Quinn Michaels would say this is a mini particle collider.
Oh, I don't know about that, but but the point is, you know, it's not complicated to look at this. If we don't let Bill start talking about his commitments to action and his initiatives and this and that. You were supposed to raise money to house the presidential records created during your 2 terms, to have a research center and to have an endowment. That's it. That cost you $150 million. Why are you still raising money?
He likes money.
And where did it go? You know,
well,
what happened to it?
That's another book.
So if we get back into the second page, next one. This is our standard warning. We'll be quick on it, but we still live in America where we do have the protection of the First Amendment, and what we're talking about here are our First Amendment views about a complicated subject. I'm happy, Jason, that you've had the patience to do so many of these presentations, but really to get the viewership educated, we had to do it this way. We had to break it, different perspectives on the same set of issues, because it's too much to try to explain in one, even 2-hour setting. So we've been going over it from different perspectives. This playlist here, I don't know if it's updated.
It is.
But yeah, so this is our 85th one coming up. We've done 84.
We didn't have a chance to do a closing in episode, but I think people were very pleased with last Sunday's James Bond opening. I thought that was kind of fun to have you depicted as a secret agent, which of course you are not.
As far as I know.
Right, as far as we know.
I mean, I could have been programmed without my knowing it.
MK Ultra victim, perhaps. Hopefully not. But that was a lot of fun. You know, Charles, the problem with these elaborate openings is that when we then don't have them, people are somewhat disappointed. So people can go back and check that playlist if they want to catch up on last week's Sunday with Charles. And there are a lot of people still emailing me that they're happy to see us back on the original Jason Goodman Crowdsource the Truth channel. So that's very good.
Great. So if we could go into we're bouncing around here, but that's okay.
Oops.
Go to the next page. Yeah, that page.
There we are.
All right, so we'll go quickly through this, but I've got to say, it seems clear to me that Hillary Clinton listens to absolutely nobody. I mean, you know, she, and when you see her say, here's this, she was asked by someone, will she disavow the strategy that Maxine Waters and others are espousing of, you know, going after Sarah Huckabee Sanders, going after Stephen Miller at his home, escalating, inciting violence, which she disavowed. She said, hell no. You know, and I mean, this is a person who believes that she is the President of the United States in an alternative universe, and we joke, but she could very well have been the President of the United States, and her thinking is so flawed.
Yeah.
You know, you see this now in the way she's behaved as the worst sore loser in history.
Indeed.
And we've got another 2 years of this minimum to put up with. And you know, the Daily Mail, this is David Martosco.
Why another 2? Oh, you're saying during Trump's presidency? I
A
thought
minimum
you were
of another 2 years.
anticipating Hillary Clinton's lifespan for a moment.
No. I mean, I actually wish her a long and, you know, happy life if that's
In
possible.
jail.
In jail, actually.
Yeah.
But this notion of going around the world, even now, collecting more speech payments and in foreign locations, criticizing a sitting president in the middle of a very complex restructuring that he's trying to undertake for the benefit of people across the economic and political spectrum in this country. To do all this is, I think, the height of irresponsibility.
Yeah.
I mean, she should stay home and forget about baking cookies. She should just stay home, write another book, you know, do something, stay out of trouble, and give the president of the United States the courtesy that she would have been demanding Donald Trump had given her had she won.
Right. Yeah, you know, and something else very interesting that came up in the show yesterday with Robin Gritz, everyone's talking about how children are being separated from parents at the border, but we don't know if these parents are actually the parents of these
Right.
children, or if they're kidnapped, or what happens to a child when they're incarcerated in some facility with adults versus by themselves. And the biggest point that came up with Robin was we look at people like Mike Dick, who was an FBI agent and whistleblower, who the FBI made up a false story about, published in the news, said he was armed and dangerous, put out this BOLO report, which is a be on the lookout for an armed and dangerous individual, which means that every police department in the country is on alert to shoot on sight to kill the guy. And that information, although it was retracted by the FBI 2 hours later on the news, it remains in the law enforcement channel and was used against Mike in a family court proceeding. The guy hasn't seen his young daughter, who was 4 or 5 or something at the time, hasn't seen her in 2 or 3 years. I don't hear anybody complaining about FBI agents and Army veterans being separated from their children, but yet that's happening. It's quite terrible.
And then we have this, you know, Michael Moore says he's prepared to surround the Capitol with 1 million people to stop the Supreme Court pick going forward. He's suggesting that he's prepared to throw his body into the fight.
That would be a substantial...
Yeah, I mean, that would be a very large contribution. But, you know, on this one, I'm going to make a small prediction here, which is I think that the left is going to be completely gobsmacked by what Trump is going to do on the Supreme Court nomination. I think what Trump's going to do is he's going to select a woman in her 40s who has impeccable credentials and who cannot be tagged with an opinion one way or the other on these controversial abortion and other related issues.
What do you mean cannot be tagged?
She won't have issued an opinion as a judge on any of these issues, so she could just say, I'm not going to comment, you know, on a hypothetical, I will deal with the facts when they're presented to me once I become a justice, but I have an open mind. And, you know, he's going to find somebody like that, and I'm told there could well be more than one person out there with exactly that set of credentials. So the Democrats would be put in a position, here Donald Trump has nominated a woman to be head of the CIA, the first ever. Then he nominates another woman to go on the Supreme Court. And, you know, good luck trashing that, particularly if you find somebody who doesn't have anything in her record that is negative. I'm told there's somebody from the Midwest who was, I'm not going to give away the name, with a #1 in her class in law school, in her 40s, impeccable credentials, law professor, judge, but judge with no decisions yet having to do with abortion. So, and there's more than one person, I think, like that. And we're going to find out in 8 days.
Wow.
Then we get this, I'm ashamed whenever I realize that Tom Steyer was in my brother's class. My brother was middle brother was 2 years behind me at Yale. And they were, I think, classmates at Yale. Tom Steyer it's a miracle to me that this man is a billionaire. He is, to say, maybe we can have a nuclear war to provide a real course correction to Trump. I mean, what kind of an idiot would make a statement like that? You really want to wish death and destruction on potentially hundreds of thousands of people over a political issue? And you think this is the kind of statement which, you know, the mass of humanity in America is going to say, yeah, you're a normal human being. You want to have nuclear war to make a domestic political point. I mean, this guy really should be ashamed of himself. But of course, he's from California and he has no shame.
Where does he want that nuclear war to take place?
Who knows?
He launched a national impeachment campaign against President Donald Trump last year.
No, he's just an inveterate loser. He may have a lot of money. He's throwing it, burning his money. But I mean, this guy, you know, is a higher order fool.
Quite a dope, I must agree. Yeah. Nuclear war does not sound like a good idea, unless we could have him ride the tip of the missile like Dr. Strangelove.
Exactly, that's a good. We should maybe do that. And then we have our favorite fake Native American. And think about this. This is I'm sort of teasing a little bit, Jason, but this is the way my crazy mind works. Okay, you're a Democrat. You're in the Hillary Clinton wing. And one of the hottest days of the year, you're going to suggest that we should get rid of ICE? Right? It's hot out there. You like ICE. And beyond that, you know, when you think through what ICE does, we have this lunatic. I've got here, the phone is on today because we actually have a colleague who's in Mexico City right now trying to vote. And I've been getting texts from her. She's a law student, a really smart young lady. She was president of her class at Wellesley, actually. And she's reporting that down in Mexico City, they're stuffing, Mexico City is a large city, obviously, with people who are not necessarily leaning towards this populist lunatic who wants to encourage Mexicans to leave, flood north to the border, who wants to, he's in favor of no longer fighting against the cartels. You guys are crazy, man. And so here, and this guy's going to win probably.
Wait. So he says, don't fight the criminal drug cartels. Right. Just leave Mexico and go to the United States. Yeah, exactly. And then Mexico becomes an entire country of drug cartels?
I don't know the logic, if there is any logic, but he's probably backed by the cartels as a guess. But the point here is that these idiots, Kirsten Gillibrand, maybe Hillary Clinton, and others are at the very moment that danger rises in Mexico, with potentially, you know, it becoming even a failed state and a flood of people coming north who would not be vetted. You really want to advocate for getting rid of ICE and not building a wall, and you think you're going to have any prayer of winning, not just in November 2018, but for elections to come. I mean, this to think that people really believe Elizabeth Warren is smart. I mean, she's got she's got worse political instincts than Hillary Clinton, and that's tough.
But we should talk about this for a second. ICE is the immigration, what does it stand for? Something enforcement.
I'm not really sure what it is exactly, but I mean what the acronym is. But it does various things. But one of the things it does, it's the one that's retaking these Long Island towns and getting rid of MS-13.
Right.
It's the one who's apprehending criminals and sending them out of this country. You know, to think that the richest country in the world would not be a target for fraudsters around the world to try to come in, overstay their visas, and, you know, live in the underground economy is to be as foolish as these people actually are.
Well, it's immigration and customs enforcement. So if I understand what they're proposing, we want to just, you know, whenever anybody gets off an airplane or whenever anybody comes from Canada or Mexico, we don't want any law enforcement there. We want to eliminate the law enforcement people that protect the borders of the country. Is that not an open invitation for criminals to come right in?
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe what their audience, they're catering to these big city mayors who are creating these sanctuary cities, which are
Why do they want that?
Well, I think because they want, their calculus is through a political lens. They want downtrodden voters to keep them in power. And they figure that these people who will come in and break the laws will happily break the laws and vote for them and keep them in power. I mean, and if we think about it, you know, Donald Trump, you can say a lot of things about him, but he's not stupid. And I'm waiting for these ads which would be almost like a deck of playing cards. You know, you put up Detroit, you know, back in 1950 and Detroit today.
Oh, it's a wreck.
Right? Entirely in that, whatever it is, 68-year period under the control of Democrats. You just pick city before, after Democrat, before, after Democrat, sanctuary city deck. You know, that's what these people are bringing to you, misery. And this fact is not lost on a majority of the population. It's not lost on enough electoral college votes to keep Donald Trump reelected and to ensure that his successor is not, you know, from the loony bin wing of the Democratic Party.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. I think we can enjoy diversity and appreciate other cultures while still having laws that govern immigration into our country. There's this bizarre muddying of the waters where if you don't agree that the entire country should be open to just anybody and everybody to just come here and live here with no legal process governing that, then you're a racist.
Yeah, and actually there's some sort of snap poll analysis of that, you know, this idea of theirs to eliminate ICE, and apparently it's like 3 out of 4 swing voters are against this idea, and there's also a movement
against the idea of eliminating it.
Yeah, they want to keep it.
Yeah,
and there's a movement amongst Democrats. It's called, you've got a hashtag called Walk Away. And if you look into hashtag Walk Away, these are Democrats who are saying, you know, we're not down with Mad Max Waters.
Right.
You know, we're not down with Red Hen Warren, and we're not down with, you know, Blue Lens Hillary Clinton.
You've just reminded me that I'm actually in touch with Brandon, who's the guy behind that hashtag Walk Away, and he's been very busy. I've been very busy, but I'm trying to get him on the show.
You definitely should.
Yeah.
And then we have this. There was this article about. We talked about it as well last Sunday, that, you know, where is Barack Obama? And here's an article saying that, in fact, and Paul Sperry is a very good journalist or opinion writer, saying that actually Barack Obama is far more involved directing the resistance than you might think. And he is a young man with, you know, many years ahead of him, and he's obviously now very wealthy as well. But, you know, where is it written that the President of the United States needs to tolerate this bullshit of, you know, a former president in his Batcave mansion, you know, directing resistance movements using foundations, his own and other 501c4 organizations that are not probably registered, that are not soliciting lawfully, that are not accounting for the monies that they get, and that are inciting people to violence. I don't think that is part of the accepted norm here. And you can talk about community organizing all you want. What you can't do as a former president of the United States is try to bring down the sitting president of the United States by inciting violence during the summer. And, you know, that's something that I think Donald Trump or any president would have every right to deliver quite a stern message to the funders of this movement and to Barack Obama himself, saying, listen, buddy, you know, we are not yet done examining just what really did happen in the 2010 election, the 2012 election, 2014 election, 2016 election, the attempt to obstruct the inauguration, and what you've been doing since. And by the way, we do have our eyes on the Barack Obama Foundation, which is a fraud.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can keep going down this path, but all you're doing, I think all Barack Obama is doing here, is inviting an end for his movement and an end for his legacy that will be anything but pretty.
Exactly. Charles, Sparky Hill on YouTube here is asking if you've been interviewed by the independent investigator in Utah. I don't know if you can comment on that.
Yeah, I think what that person is referring to is the U.S. attorney, and any matter that may or may not be happening in Utah is a confidential matter that, you know, I just have no comment on it.
Got it. And also, people are loving on Periscope the way that you are gutting the Clinton Foundation. So that's
we haven't yet begun to do that.
I should have been more on top of this. I would have put Mr. Obama in a Where's Waldo outfit.
We could do that. I think we should definitely do that.
Where's Barrio?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So if we just hit that next top link, yeah. I remember, this is an old story, but I remember the story of people who were on the commando raid to get Osama bin Laden.
Yeah.
I'll make sure I get that right.
Right.
That a whole bunch of them were killed in an ambush. And
when their Chinook helicopter crashed.
right, and what the story was, I was told at the time that the rules of engagement had been changed, where under Obama's tenure as president, where we used to come in hard into an area, but under his tenure it was like, well, we don't want to annoy the villagers, so we're not going to put down withering fire. And anyway, they get killed. And I believe there now is an investigation, there should be an investigation into what truly happened here. People talk about Obama says his was a scandal-free presidency.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting way to define scandal-free. I mean, I think I would call it his is a scandal-riddled presidency.
Yeah.
And the truth, I think, will now get told.
And Periscope is saying that BHO belongs in prison. It's going to make a supermax for all of these political nut jobs.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, yeah, then this Scalise thing. There's a writer here, yeah. We saw, sadly, the Annapolis thing, which I think had less to do with politics and more to do with somebody with issues, mental issues, upset about a defamation case that he lost. But we forget that Scalise was shot by an ardent Bernie supporter, right? That was certainly, that person went down to the baseball stadium to try to kill Republicans.
But I don't believe he was a Bernie supporter. That guy was a card-carrying SEIU member, and I think that was a staged shooting to intimidate Trump and Republicans that support him.
Well, there certainly was a political animus to it, right?
Yes.
Whether it was Bernie or Hillary or whatever, it certainly was, the intent was to take out a whole bunch of Republicans.
Right.
And, you know, when you are a former president of the United States, when you are a senator, when you're a congressman, when you're president of the United States, you know, you just cannot incite this type of behavior, particularly in our hot summer when temperatures rise, you know, and school children are out of work, or out of school, and typically many don't have good summer jobs, and you know, you pay them a few bucks and you incite a riot. That is just despicable behavior, and it's actually illegal. So I think
what specifically is the law that it's breaking?
Well, Lionel actually was posting about there's incitement to riot is one federal law that you're not allowed to do that. And
yeah, but you see, when I've seen other people doing that, for some reason, nothing happens. Oh, Charles, look at this. Super Chat is working. I definitely want to thank Aisle 3 for utilizing the Super Chat there on 21st Century 3D.
Great, well done.
Very nice. I'll keep my eyes on that.
So if we go back into the slide there, this is pretty funny. There's a great writer, Clarice Feldman. Mm-hmm. We hit that one. She writes for American Thinker.
One of your favorites.
It is. And it's a long read. Let's not try to go through it now, but I commend this to the audience, the viewership. This is a great writer. It's a great piece. It's very funny, actually, as well. She goes through several reasons.
Fun president ever.
Yeah. She goes through several positive developments that happened just last week, and she's a good writer with an excellent sense of humor to boot. So if we go back into the slides.
Yes.
Now, there's been some good news here, this C-SPAN link. I have been waiting, and we've all been waiting for some time now, for the new IRS commissioner to be confirmed.
Yes.
And his confirmation hearing happened last week. I don't know whether it's been put up for a vote yet, but he's certainly close to getting installed. And this is good news, because the IRS is the critical department for analyzing the frauds at the Clinton Foundation, both for going into the files as to what happened in the past,
Right.
and then to have some real people who are objective take a hard look at the facts going all the way back to October 23, 1997, at the past investigations. Why were past investigations not brought all the way home towards indictments, convictions, and incarcerations? That's a trail that I think can be followed once this gentleman is installed, and I believe he will soon be installed.
And you've been talking about this for quite a while. What's the new commissioner's name again, Charles?
Charles Rettig, R-E-T-T-I-G.
So is this guy going to finally bring the hammer down and crush these evildoers?
See, I don't know how the IRS works exactly, but I think what will happen is that with his being installed, we can count on dramatic turnover inside the IRS, that people can be moved around, and that we can, instead of things being stopped by the bureaucracy, we'll have the ability now to really get into the meat of what should be an obvious prosecution.
Perhaps we should send President Trump a sign that says IRS directors installed and serviced here.
Yeah, that's good.
That'll be good.
So now, in my view, and I think the audience will agree, that Mueller and Comey and Rosenstein particularly, Holder, Lynch, Obama, the Clintons, they have lots and lots of explaining to do. There's some very bad facts in these files. But before we get into the depth of that, there's been something that happened in the last 24 hours. There's been a great piece in the Wall Street Journal, and we pull it up here. This is the Canadian couple that were found. The original theory was that in December of last year, 17, that this billionaire family, it was a murder-suicide. And now people are saying, actually not so much. The police now believe it's an open murder investigation. They're following more than 500 leads on it. Wow. And so this piece, generally speaking, it's tough to get unless you're a subscriber through to this piece, but for some reason we were able to. And it's a long piece. We won't try to go through it here. Please, viewership, read this, send this around. People up in Canada, this reeks to me, and I'll show you why when we get into the slide itself. You can go there.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's another one of these body count style murder cases.
Right. So the next page, yeah. So the question is this potentially Clinton related? And so the Apotex, which was one of the Sherman's most important companies, is a generic drug maker, much like Ranbaxy, bigger than Ranbaxy. And Apotex was working with this entity called Direct Relief. These are examples of the different things they'd done, some of which they did in the Haiti one, I believe. This one, Medicine to Treat 1 Million People, arrives in Haiti. They did some of that work with the Clinton Global Initiative and possibly with the Clintons themselves. So if you go back into the slide, here we have a Clinton Global Initiative commitment to action involving Apotex. Apotex is one of the companies involved here. Now, let's examine one important thing that I hadn't revealed, and I will now reveal for the first time. The Clinton Global Initiative's application for federal tax exemption, there's a line in it that says, are you going to do international work? And the Clinton Global Initiative says, no.
Yeah.
So how does it do any of this international work for all these over 100 countries they say they've operated in? How do they do any of that?
I guess lying?
Oh, Clinton's lying?
Yeah, never.
Proud graduates of Yale Law School. But if you go back into the slides, Jason, now there's, don't pull that link up, but here, this link is a long story which recounts Barry Sherman's history, which is very complex and involves having dealt with a lot of fraudsters, it would seem. But one interesting thing that apparently is possible in Canada that I can tell you is not possible in the United States of America is that the Sherman family would donate money to their foundation. They have something called the Apotex Foundation, and they have something called the Sherman Family Foundation.
Right.
They would donate cash to their foundation and then turn around and have the foundation lend that cash back to their company. So what does that do for them? That gives them a tax deduction on the donation, and then it gives all the money right back to the company. So they're not really out of anything. I know.
How is that? I mean, that's
it's not
obvious
legal
to a dummy that that's fraud.
Well, it's legal in Canada, apparently.
What?
Now, yeah, and so this explains to me possibly what Juster's all about with his foundations. If you could do that in Canada, if you can make a deduction, take a deduction for putting money into your controlled foundation, and then have that controlled foundation bring the money right back into your pocket, I mean, that's fantastic.
Why doesn't everybody open a foundation in Canada?
Well, I think they're going to change the law in time, but this is a very interesting revelation. We have heard through various sources that there have been investigations opened in Canada into Justra, into the Clintons, etc., but that these investigations are being stymied by Trudeau because Justin Trudeau, I don't like to see his smile.
When you watch the playback, you're going to love the timing. I just brought up the wonderful photograph of Mr. Trudeau at the moment that you mentioned him.
There you go. So Trudeau, his family, as we've talked about before, has a very large foundation, bigger than the Clinton Foundation, and the finance minister of Canada has problems because he's got his family business is setting up these shell companies around the world in which Canadians have gotten trapped in the Paradise Papers, maybe in the Panama Papers as well.
That ties in a bit to the whole Harmon Wilfred and Carolyn Dare Wilfred story because they are, well, anyway, sorry.
So back on the slides,
yes,
if we may. And
her brothers and her father had a offshore thing in the Panama Papers.
Yeah. So this, if we just pull that link, this is another long link, but it's really worth reading. And it talks about, you know, nasty fights going way back. It talks about all sorts of problems. This is a tangled tale. And how many of these, you know, tangled billionaire types do the Clintons end up knowing? It seems, you know, do they know any straight people? It's always, you know, people are accused of fraud, people are involved in different messes.
Well, you know, obviously birds of a feather flock together, and you've always said that, you know, fraudsters seek out fraudsters. I mean, it makes sense.
Fraudsters got a fraud.
Fraudsters got a fraud. It's a nice house, Charles.
This is they were selling this to get a new one, the big one.
Wow. Look at the barbecue grill over there. Look at the outdoor. Looks great. I guess crime does pay, contrary to what we've heard.
Yeah. All right, so if we move into the next page. Now, this is a slide that I'm doing slightly differently than we've done in the past, but take a look at this. Spend a little bit of time here. The years where there's an asterisk are years where there's no audit. Okay, you have to have an audit. There's no tax return and no audit for 1997. So we have no idea what actually happened in 1997. Right?
Another book.
In 1988, 9, 0, 1, and 2 and 3, there's no compliant audit of any kind. There's fake audits. Okay, so what we use are the tax returns to see the revenues that they declare for donations. Mm-hmm. And then from 2004 onwards to 2016, we use the fake audits to see how much they declare in contributions and grants. Mm-hmm. And we see that in this period where Hillary Clinton is just a senator, before she announces to be a presidential candidate, the foundation raises $400 million, if you are to believe their numbers, which I don't believe. And 400 million is 250 million more than they needed to complete the complex in Little Rock. So, you know, query, why were they raising this money really? Then, from 2007 to 2016, when she was a presidential candidate, they raised another $2.5 billion. 2.5 billion with a B.
It's actual money, Charles.
That's serious money. Now, there are no audits at all. And an audit is not, you know, an IRS guy coming in or woman coming in to check your books. An audit is an accounting firm checking your submission to the IRS, which is required in every one of these years they had to do it.
The notorious BKD?
Exactly, notorious BAD, BKD, whatever. So there's no audit at all for the first three and a half years or so. There are audits for every subsequent year, but none of them are legally compliant. Among other reasons, the only year in which years where they use the correct legal name, and you can't create a foundation with one name and then use a different name to raise the money. The reason for that is that if you were able to do that, you could set up all kinds of crooked bank accounts where you could just have the money go to that crooked bank account and not go to the foundation. So there's strict controls in theory on the name that you use, and it has to be tied to a registered address. In no year did they do this properly. Not one year. So you look at this and you say, they raised $2.9 billion for a $150 million project. There are now 20 years of history. This is a partial year, 97. 20 years of history. Democrat President Clinton, Republican President W. Bush, then Obama, and nothing. Nobody has, in the IRS has stood up to say, wait a minute. No audits, no proof. We have no idea what really happened here. They've raised almost $3 billion. This is a dynastic political family. First they tried to get Hillary in, that didn't work. Now they're going to try to get diarrhea Chelsea in someday in the future. And that's why they've amassed this war chest. I mean, are we in the business in 2018 America, are we in the business of creating dynastic monarchical families?
Apparently, yes.
Well, we might have, in the past we were, and that's because, Barack Obama and his team's looking at this and saying, anything the Clintons can do, I can do worse.
But didn't the Bushes sort of test this out, where H.W. paved the way for his idiotic sons to come in there? And then it was like version 2.0 when the Clintons got there, which said, wait a minute, we don't have to wait a generation. We could use the wife, the daughter,
Yeah, Socks, I think the cat is dead, right?
He would be a better president than Hillary.
Yeah. But so, a high-level case, you look at this and you say, this is an epic fraud. How come nobody did anything about it?
Well, where is Lois Lerner now, Charles?
Probably on the Hamptons.
Really?
I don't know.
I mean, there's no financial, maybe she's the head of BKD. That would be perfect. Right.
No, Lois Lerner and various people in the IRS, Department of Justice, need to be looking at prison terms, long prison terms. We'll get to that in a second.
For themselves.
So we've given you the source for this information, is this link down the bottom. But while Hillary was a senator, 14% of the money was raised. But when she became a presidential contender, 86% of the money. So does that tell you anything about the motivations for the donors? They looked at this and they said, we could buy access to the President of the United States, who doles out lots of contracts, who has, his team has prosecutorial discretion, we can get out of jail free, we can get money back. Of course we'll layer on $2.5 billion they don't need for stupid projects nobody's checking.
Yeah, right.
So if we go to the next page. All right, I won't read word for word here, but here's one rub. Beyond the problems that surface, the second indictments are secured and then maybe unsealed. On the 15th of November this year, the Clinton Foundation must file by that date a tax return that answers, this is really getting into the weeds. On part 6, line 5, the thing asks, did the organization become aware during the year of a material diversion of the organization's assets? What is a material diversion? A material diversion is taking, in the case of the Clinton Foundation, more than $250,000 to use it for a purpose for which you were not authorized. So if you've done that,
anything,
and it explains here that if you, let's say money comes in, you're supposed to build a library and a research center in Little Rock, and you use it to fight HIV/AIDS. You can't do that. Even if you use it and then you give the money back, you still have a material diversion. And what the tax form instructions point out, and what we point out in this slide, is that this is a tricky question, because it doesn't ask, are you aware of a material diversion in 2017? It's, are you aware of a material diversion at any point in your existence?
Right.
Which they have to be. We've been doing, this is our 85th show on this. You have to be aware by this point of substantial material diversions that did occur. And they have to file this form by November 15th, 2018. And this time, God willing, there will be a new person in charge of the IRS, empowered U.S. attorneys, mature FBI investigations and reinvestigations. They're not going to get away with filing crappy, incomplete, false, and materially misleading tax returns again in 2018. They're not going to get away with that.
So you think Bill has the notifications set on his YouTube subscriptions for Sunday with Charles?
Yeah,
he has to be aware of all these shortcomings.
Well, but the point is that the accounting firms have to be aware. The accountant has to sign his or her name on the tax return. And if you're not aware of it by now, you're going to get, I don't know, somebody who's deaf, dumb, blind, and, has the mental level of a 6-month-old person. I mean, you have to see that there have been substantial material diversions. We're only talking about 250,000. Now, why is this significant? If you check that line on the tax form, that there has been a material diversion, tripwires explode all over the world. Most states, you have to disclose in full why there was a material diversion, what's it all about. And so this is a Moab bomb?
Because a diversion is basically you're stealing the money.
Well, again, it says here, diversion of assets includes any unauthorized conversion or use of the organization's assets other than for the organization's authorized purposes. It doesn't say authorized activities, authorized purposes. Theft, you're right, or embezzlement does count, but this is, if money comes into the Clinton Foundation coffers and, you know, they want to go hold this big-ass party in New York, the Clinton Global Initiative, they can't do it, take the money and do that. That's a diversion.
Even if it's a really nice party?
Even
Charles?
if it's a really, if the money...
To help kids?
No, kids, that's wrong, yeah. Sick kids. But...
they're going to invite models, Charles.
Yeah, exactly, I'm sure. Yeah, no, you can't do that. There's actually several memos that say, you know, if your authorized purposes are to have a research center and library in Little Rock and to have an endowment, and along the way you use the money to find a cure for cancer, that's still a problem. You're not authorized to do that. It's not like you get a driver's license, as I've said. You just drive your car wherever you want as a charity. No, you get set up. There are lots of charities out there. The IRS wants some control over what you're doing. You got to tell them what you're going to do. And then
See, it's a good example that you just gave, because that's interesting. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there thinking like, well, if a charity just wants to cure cancer, who would object to that? But it's not the way charity law works.
That's right. No, because you have to have a team, because that's actually a very good point, because
It just opens the door for them to do anything they want.
well, there's a lot of gullible people out there who will say, "Oh, you know, this is a former president of the United States, and he thinks he can cure cancer. Let's give him the money." You know, when he has no ability to cure cancer. I mean, one would argue maybe he's even causing cancer in some the ways he's doing this work.
Depleted uranium all over the place.
Yeah, so this is actually, I think there are many tripwires in here beyond the open investigations, which I believe are out there, but this is staring this team in the face. You're going to fill this form out. We're going to be, the second that form goes in, we're going to take a look at it. Now let's see how they did on this question, which is the same question was out there from 2008 to the present. Let's look at history. How did they do in the past? Next slide. 13 tax returns asked the same question. Now, to do this properly, when you fill the tax return in, you're supposed to fill a consolidated result. That means you show all of your activities, okay, on a consistent basis. Did they do that in any of these returns? For 2008, some are amended. There are 13 different returns. Did any of them, Jason, any single one of them file a consolidated return? Third column.
Suppose it depends on what your definition of no is.
Yeah. And concerning a material diversion, you know, they are asked the part 6, the question in part 6, question 5, they were asked, were they aware of a material diversion? These diversions began in 2002. And they were asked, starting in 2008, were they aware of a material diversion? Jason, in any one of these returns, did they say they were aware?
They did not.
That's a big problem. That's a big problem, because, you know, in how many states was this return likely filed?
50?
13 times. And then look at this in these different countries. It started out in the beginning, 24, 27 countries. But then for some reason...
Yeah, why is it so...
It's dropping because they wanted to make sure they didn't want to file a consolidated return, because, in my judgment, because the consolidated return trips them up even more, because it involves them in more and more countries, and involves, in a consolidated return, you have to disclose, or in a normal return, you've got to disclose any related party transactions where, like Laureate, where Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton made $17.6 million off a donor, a joint venture partner, Laureate. You have to disclose that, and they didn't disclose that in any of these returns. So they wanted to shrink the international footprint, I think, of the panoply of potential conflict of interest transactions. So they purposely left off, you know, nations, in my view, on this return. Now, one nation, you know, what nation did we talk about involving Barry Sherman?
Canada.
And when did they start the Clinton-Justra matter in 2007? July 2007.
I guess
I'm
July.
leading the witness. Anyway, so from 2008 onwards, they have been continually involved in Canada. In no tax return do they disclose any activities in Canada.
Wow.
You know?
I mean, that right there, if you or I started a business and did that, that's jail.
That's right. But the crooked's get away with it. I mean, that's what Donald Trump is now calling Hillary. He's just calling her crooked. We don't need to use the word Clinton. So
Yes.
it's the crookeds, the crooked family. That's what they do.
Well, he's very good at branding. Whatever anybody wants to say, it's undeniable that the Trump brand is one of the most famous in the world. So Crooked Hillary could be a close second.
They were just crooked.
Crooked.
The crookeds.
Should start making hotels.
That's right. But I mean, and this is, 13 separate tax returns. Every single one of these is submitted either electronically or using the mail, across state lines, just under penalties of perjury. Every single one of these is just a laundry list of fraud. And you can't say with this team here, they have multiple accounting firms, multiple law firms, multiple brilliant trustees. It's Bill Hillary and Diarrhea Chelsea on the letterhead of this thing, and they can't even get the name right of their foundation and their tax filings and the address right.
The Diarrhea Chelsea Foundation. Could be the new name.
Yeah. So I had this in the back of my mind, and we're not going to hammer Bill for the underlying reason why he had to surrender his law license, both his Arkansas license and his license to practice before the Supreme Court.
Wasn't it for rape?
No, I said we weren't going to hammer him.
Oh.
It was for, it's not a laughing matter, obviously, but it was for obstructing justice and lying under oath as a lawyer. So this is the national model rule, which was adopted in Arkansas. I'm not a lawyer or an accountant, but I can read English.
The Bill Clinton model rule is way different.
Yeah, exactly. But look at this. It is professional misconduct for a lawyer to violate the rules, to commit a criminal act. Now there's a novel thought. A lawyer can't commit a criminal act.
Oh, I didn't know. That you gotta show me the rules.
How was I
first.
supposed to know? Right? That reflects adversely on the lawyer's honesty. So the way the crookeds would look at this is say, nothing could reflect adversely. Everybody knows we're crooked. So, we'll just commit a criminal act, and because it doesn't reflect adversely on us, as everybody knows we're crooked.
Yeah, I should have.
Engage in conduct involving dishonesty, fraud, deceit, or misrepresentation. That would leave the crookeds with nothing to do, right?
That's right.
But really, I'm thinking here about Bruce Lindsay. And Bruce Lindsay is a member of the Arkansas Bar.
Well, and I'm thinking about Chris Gowan, because dishonesty would probably include lying to the judge about your client working for Uber when he's actually working for you.
Yeah, and you can't engage in conduct that is prejudicial to the administration of justice. That would be something you're talking about. Improperly try to influence the government agency.
If that also would include the U.S. Capitol Police, if what Thomas Paine has surmised is correct.
Right. So I mean, I think the lawyers, and you've got Bruce Lindsay, you've got Cheryl Mills, you've got quite a few, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, for that matter, Barack and Michelle Obama, Terry McAuliffe, I think, is a lawyer. A lot of people who are lawyers here. Kendall at Williams and Connolly, and the crew at Williams and Connolly, the crew, John Tisdale at one of those law firms in Arkansas. I mean, I think I see enough here as a non-lawyer that as this goes hurtling forward with indictments leading to convictions and incarcerations, another thing that needs to happen is all these lawyers need to be stripped of their law licenses and forever barred from A, practicing law, and B, holding a position of trust anywhere in the universe.
Barred from the bar.
Exactly.
Here's a serious question, though. So, professional misconduct, that's not a crime, that's just a...
Well, it results in your getting disbarred. But this commit a criminal act is a crime.
Well,
I think.
yeah.
We'll have to check.
Yeah.
So.
Not in Arkansas, it's not.
No, it's the state sport. So if we go down here at the bottom, we also talk a little bit about accounting firms. So we don't need to pull up the two links, But if people are interested in this, Arthur Andersen went out of business for its role falsifying documents and
shredding Enron, right?
And the scale of that particular set of transactions was 1 point some odd billion, as contrasted to 3 billion of known revenues. And the way I would look at this Clinton Foundation, it's the solicitation of the money that was one set of crimes, 3 billion, and then it was the diversion of that money to uses for which it wasn't authorized. Which
that becomes tax fraud?
Well, that becomes a different type of fraud, and then also, you're right, tax fraud. You start adding this up, you know, it is, some would argue, a little bit double counting, but I don't think so. You're way bigger than the Enron Andersen matter. And the defense that got the conviction overturned, and this is that fellow Weissman, that despicable human being on the lead prosecutor for Mueller, is that in the Andersen case, they failed to show consciousness of wrongdoing. They couldn't demonstrate that the Arthur Andersen people knew what they were doing was wrong.
Accidental shredding.
Yeah, but in this case, I mean, if you can't demonstrate that the team around the Clinton Foundation knew what they were doing is wrong, then you really need to give up. I mean, you know, you should just find a cardboard box, pick a warm climate where there's not a lot of rain, and live on it.
The other thing I want to ask you while we're on Enron, didn't Christopher Wray also, he was working with Mueller on Enron?
Yeah,
wasn't Mr. Rosenstein involved somehow?
I don't know if he was involved.
But Wray definitely was.
Yeah, Wray was on the Enron task force with Mueller. But Rosenstein, while the Enron frauds were happening, was, I think, in the Justice Department in charge of deciding which tax fraud cases would be prosecuted. So he could say he was more than tangentially involved in Enron as well.
Yeah, which tax fraud cases to ignore this week?
Exactly.
He's really indignant in those hearings, right? He's very good at, getting angry and yelling at Jim Jordan and stuff. It's like, it's crazy to see how bold these guys are.
Yeah, well teed up here. I mean, what's happening, I think, right now is we're seeing from Watergate days, the cover-up is worse than the crime. And what's going on is that this cover-up is unraveling before our eyes. If we hit this link here, this is really something. The FBI, and this is something with 36,000 shares, Facebook shares from Breitbart just recently, getting a lot of attention. Supposedly the FBI is refusing to give Congress material that would show Loretta Lynch interfering in the Clinton investigation. Now that's outrageous. It's not surprising, but it's outrageous. Yeah. And now the FBI is apparently 14,710 comments since the 29th of June in 2 days.
Wow.
So, I, for one, am sick and tired, as to use a Hillary Clintonism, I am sick and tired of these spectacles, of these hearings, where the deep state gets up there, Rosenstein gets up there, and anytime a questioner gets close, well, I can't comment on that matter. It would betray sensitive sources and practices that would put our agents at risk,
methods,
or sources and methods, or this is a classified, or this is an ongoing investigation. Come on, guy.
Right.
Everybody knows that this is a travesty what has happened here. You're not fooling anybody. You're stalling for time. You're trying to get us to a zone where the 60-day rule will apply. Stop the bullshit.
You're one of the only people who has discussed that 60-day rule, Charles. And what is that rule? Who imposes that rule?
Apparently, it's described in the at length in the Inspector General report, where they explain the whole. It's not technically a rule; it's a practice.
It's not a law. It's just kind of a guideline.
That you don't drop a bomb within 60 days of an election on somebody, particularly somebody who's running.
So that's why everybody was so pissed off at dopey James Comey during the election.
Yeah. Well, the first bomb was not 60 days.
Oh, right, it was in July.
Yeah.
But then he did another one that was, right?
Yeah. So if we go back, then we have this this Zero Hedge piece. And Zero Hedge is on fire.
What is this?
here we have supposedly Mueller is letting Flynn his whatever sentencing date or whatever the date is that he's up as a court date, a sentencing date. He's got another delay in that. I think Mueller's case against Flynn is gone. I really do.
Well, not only that, though, but I mean, is it a reprieve or is it more of this sort of, you know, just messing with him? We were discussing this with Robin Gritz as well, and you got to remember, Robert Mueller can just like delay and whatever. He's a lawyer. He's getting paid by the hour. General Flynn has got to pay his lawyers to show up or to, you know, reschedule and do more work. This concept of amending and filing additional stuff, it just drags out the process and makes the already onerous, punitive lawfare tactics even more difficult.
Yeah, I hope out of all this that Michael Flynn will be vindicated. I don't know much about Manafort. I don't like the fact that Mueller is messing around in 2004 and 2005 on Manafort, but no one seems to be interested in looking at the Clinton Foundation. Oh, that's right, because Mueller was investigating the Clinton Foundation from 2001 to 2005 and didn't see the obvious. I mean, there's just a two-sided approach here, clear evidence to me of unequal treatment under the, quote, law.
Yeah.
You know, here you have a friend, an enemy of Obama, Clinton, Bush, and you go after
You're talking about
Manafort.
Flynn.
Well, you go after Manafort because, you know, he's an enemy of, certainly an enemy on the other side of Obama and Clinton, for sure, and maybe of Bush. Mm-hmm. And in the case of Flynn, you know, he was fired by Obama.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I like to bring up General Flynn's Defense Fund website because I support General Flynn. I think he was very brave to go onto RT and say that it was deliberate to create ISIS, and that certainly resulted in his, you know, everything that's going on right now. So
he's a man of principle, and you know, dare I point out, I believe he was, I don't know if he still is, a registered Democrat. You know, and so. But here's a military veteran with a storied career who's now unfairly being targeted by the deep state. And this cannot stand, Mr. Trump.
Well, and the thing that's really interesting is he's being targeted not because of wrongdoing, but because he's trying to point out their wrongdoing. Yeah. So it's a very interesting situation. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just posting the link to the Michael Flynn defensefund.org. It's actually Mike Flynn defensefund.org, and I'm just posting it to the comments there.
So, on Rosenstein, this Daily Caller piece we might pull up, you know, this is your friend.
I love that picture.
I mean, it really, what kind of cartoon, maybe the crowd can have comments on what cartoon character does he most represent? I mean, he's either a cartoon character.
The Mask. He reminds me of the guy from The Mask with the crazy eyes and the big teeth.
It could be. Yeah, it could be.
Those eyeballs could pop out of his
exactly.
head.
Maybe somebody could. But I think people in the crowd, if you have ideas, those of you who are good with images, send them our way. But you know, here's Louis Gohmert, your friend, and I bet him, accusing Rosenstein of potentially having spied on Gohmert for various reasons, including Gohmert's interest in getting to the bottom of what really truly happened with the Awan.
Yes, and of course people probably recall that I spoke to Louis Gohmert about that in Texas and gave him that clear and present danger report. He's been one of the leading representatives to be sort of hammering on that matter, which is important.
It is. And if we go back into the second link under there, the zero hedge thing, this is, I think, troubling. Very troubling. If this is true, frantic, nervous, upset, emotional, Rosenstein was overwhelmed during Comey firing? I mean, come on, this guy's running the Justice Department.
Huh. It's another great picture of him.
You know, I got some real problems with this. I mean, you want to have Cool Hand Luke running the Justice Department, or Cool Hand Laura. I mean, you want somebody who loves the law, who's got the temperament to think clearly, who is not married to a partisan hack, as as we'll get into in a second.
The FISA buster or whatever she's called.
Well, we're going to get into that in a second. You know, this notion that James Comey and Rod Rosenstein can be impartial above it all when their wives are so politically partisan, or what's his name, McCabe, same deal. The notion that you can be involved in administering justice and have an active partisan hack wife is lunacy. You obviously can't do that.
This looks like within the same time frame as that other ridiculous picture.
Yeah.
His hand is gigantic. He should slap himself in the face with that. Now, Charles, who is this quote from? Frantic, nervous, upset.
It's somebody on the staff.
Just a source.
Yes, yeah, it's a CNN source, an unnamed source.
Is it CNN?
I'm just making it. Another person familiar with, this.
Right. Yeah, Rosenstein. I don't know. That guy's got to go.
But then we go back into the slide, why can I be so definitive about the wife? Here's Patrick Howley, who's a good guy, writing about Rod Rosenstein's wife.
Big league politics. Whoops, how do we get rid of that?
And this was published, 3 months ago, but
Rod cleared his own. He cleared Hillary.
Yeah, this is if you go just a little bit into the story. So his wife is Lisa Barsoomian, represented President Clinton in the civil case. Rod Rosenstein worked on the FBI travel office case. He interviews Hillary Clinton on January 14th, 1998. That's a very important moment. That's when the IRS, the Clinton Foundation application, October 23, 1997. The determination letter issued January 29th, 1998. Rosenstein interrogates Hillary Clinton on January 14th, before the IRS gives him the tax exemption, and clears her in the travelgate matter. Okay, but in his resume, he only says he works with Starr through 1997. So he's trying to hide the fact that he let Hillary Clinton off the hook for travelgate, and I doubt he did that work thoroughly enough.
If anybody looks into travelgate at all, it's another one of these situations where, the Clintons, a lot of people are like, oh, that was investigated and it's over, but just now we're starting to see how these investigations are really run. It's all done by their friends who all have things to gain by being involved. But the travelgate matter, there was an individual working in the travel office at the White House who had been there since Lyndon Johnson's presidency, 30 years, career government worker, not making a lot of money. And the Clintons wanted to get some friend of theirs in there to handle all the travel through a private travel agency, an obvious scheme to steal money. And they framed this dude and got him lawfare, lost all his money defending himself, eventually found not guilty of anything, but he was ruined.
Well, but think then about the Clinton Foundation. One of the biggest line items expenses in their fantasy fiction financial statements.
Legal fees?
No, travel.
Oh yeah, right. That's what I mean. They love doing that. You can hide a lot of money there.
Well, and not only that, if you're handling, if you're Bill Clinton, and you want to fly your mistresses around, or you don't want people to know exactly what you're doing.
Fly on Jeffrey Epstein's jet.
You get a friendly travel agent, and what they can do. I'm aware of this, not because I've seen it personally, but I've had people explain to me. Looking at travel investments, I looked at buying some travel agencies. So what you can do, you have a crooked travel agent, and the travel agent will say, call a crooked travel agent up and say, listen, I don't want to show that much income this month. Could you please send me an invoice for $1 million and mark it paid, but I'm not going to give you any money. And then you take.
Well, anyone could do that, couldn't they?
But travel agents especially, because there are all kinds of kickbacks and rebates and this and that. So it's very easy to wash money if you have a crooked travel agent in tow. And we have this episode of Travelgate, we have the fact that in no tax return of any part of the Clinton Foundation do they list a travel agent as being the highest, one of the top 5 highest paid contractors, but they're spending, many millions of dollars on travel. So how do they do that? Are they using multiple different travel agents? I don't think so. So
when I was a kid, my parents had a lot of money stolen from them through some credit card fraud done by their travel agent at the time.
Really? Wow, sorry to hear that.
That was a long time ago.
So if we go back in, We're almost done. We're flying through this.
Well, it's,
So this is an Andy McCarthy piece.
this guy again.
And Andy is a very thorough guy, but the bottom line in his piece, which is worth reading in the entirety, is Donald Trump needs to step it up here. And it is ridiculous that a Republican-controlled Congress is not getting the cooperation that it should get out of a Republican-controlled executive branch department. It's ridiculous. You know, Donald Trump has the ability to say, listen, and it's a miracle to me that 115,000 people work for this Rosenstein guy who's apparently unbalanced.
That is crazy.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah, 115,000.
That's big. But my point is that Donald Trump, you know, he shouldn't personally be saying, all right, release this document, not that document, but it should be possible without interfering in an investigation to say, I absolutely want my FBI and my Department of Justice to cooperate with a Republican-controlled Congress in the same pattern and practice as happened the last several times that we had a Republican-controlled Congress make requests of a Republican-controlled Department of Justice, and technically the FBI is independent, but it's under the purview of the Deputy Attorney General. So, I mean, it should be possible to get these goddamn documents. And in a worst case, Donald Trump could just say, listen, you know, I'm going to declassify everything that you've asked for, unless you could come to my desk and demonstrate to our team over here why we shouldn't. My inclination is to declassify every single one of these documents and put them online.
Why do you expect he's not doing that?
I don't know. I don't know what's in these documents. My suspicion is that some of these documents likely reveal that that false declarations were made, knowingly false declarations were made swearing out these FISA warrants, that there is evidence that these people have the ability to see of the past administration colluding, conspiring with foreign security services to spy, maybe not just on the Trump campaign, but on other campaigns.
MI6.
That this pattern and practice may go way back. It may have happened. I mean, if it's alleged that people were spying on Congress, people were spying on the Senate, maybe on the Supreme Court, if that was happening under Obama, who wouldn't believe that those same people might have been spying in 2010 when the Tea Party was rising, in 2012 when Romney was running, in 2014 when they had a lot to lose, and in 2016 when they have everything to lose and afterwards. Right. So that's my suspicion, that there's, you know, people like Rosenstein, maybe people like Wray, many people in the Justice Department, some of the holdovers in the FBI know about this illegal behavior, and they know that when it gets revealed, they're facing jail.
Yeah. Well, but that wouldn't stop Trump from wanting to
I don't
declassify it, but it certainly makes these two bozos not want to declassify it.
So if we go back in,
I don't know.
This is a Glenn Beck article on this. We've talked about it before. This $84 million lawsuit alleging that the Clinton campaign laundered $84 million by saying they were raising it in coordination with state campaigns, but that in fact this money was going to go directly only back into the Clinton campaign. And that is, the way people explain to me, the way I read it, that is a potential serious set of crimes, which doesn't surprise me. I mean, the crooks don't believe in playing by the rules. So
doesn't 84 million seem low to you?
Well, yeah, this is just one of the pockets. I mean, this is probably lunch money for them, stealing lunch money.
Exactly. They have them for lunch. It's like a bologna sandwich and $50 million.
Right. So this is great. This is this conservative treehouse. I can't go a week without getting one of their articles up here. They really do good work. But here's this Hungarian leader basically saying, you know, no, I run Hungary. I don't care about the EU particularly. I'm going to protect Hungary. Don't you dare tell me, Angela Merkel, you know, what I need to do. And he was being interviewed apparently on BBC, and here's the actual clip. We don't have to play it. And basically the Hungarian foreign minister told the interviewer to go pound sand in so many words. It's really refreshing.
It seems like Angela Merkel's stock is really crashing.
It is. It should. It should.
She's the German Hillary and the queen of unregulated globalism, I guess.
Well, it's a good point you make. If we go back into the slides, you'll see that, well, we'll get to it in a bit. Rudy Giuliani has called, is saying that the days of the Iranian Ayatollah and his malocracy are numbered.
Really?
And it certainly does seem to me that, as Trump points out in a great interview with Maria Bartiromo this morning that aired on Fox Business, where Iran under Obama, following the deal where we gave away the store, John Kerry surrendered away the store, as he likes to do, pontificating all the while, Iran was getting, after they got their cash, they got more and more militant, they were eyeing the Mediterranean, they were eyeing expansive negative terrorist activities around the world. And now where are they? Now they're worried about holding on to the rule that they once had. You got demonstrations in the streets in Iran. They may or may not turn out and lead to a regime that is more friendly to the United States. But I think anything that pulls away from this corrupt malocracy in Iran is something to be supported and, I mean, from afar and encouraged. We shouldn't be meddling, in the elections there.
But doesn't it sound like they're talking about a war?
Well, I don't know. I think a lot like has happened with Ceausescu in Romania, he had an iron grip on that country, and then the Soviet Union fell apart, and Eastern Europe fell apart, and the people just overwhelmed Ceausescu and actually executed him and his wife.
Wow.
But in the case of Iran here, Iran had a long period under the Shah, admittedly, but it was a period of secular rule.
Right.
And under the Shah, Iran is actually was friendly with Israel at the time. One of the very few nations way back when, prior to '79, that was friendly with Israel, doing business with it, flew flights back and forth. So there is, in that large country, there are quite a few people in Iran who are educated.
Wasn't the Shah terrible, though, like killing people who were political opponents and having death squads and things?
Well, there were allegations of activity like that. And you have to remember, when you're talking about Iran, it's a big country. It's a lot of people. And I'm not saying what he did was perfect, but I am saying that what the mullahs have done since 1979 is a failed experiment. They've had almost 40 years to try this. It is not working. The people who are getting rich, who got rich in Iran, are close to the mullahs or the mullahs themselves. They are a force for evil around the world. It's not like they're just, if they were doing what they wanted to do inside Iran, it'd be fine. That's not what they're doing. They're meddling across the Middle East. They're fomenting, they're trying to topple Saudi Arabia. They're instigating trouble wherever they go.
Yeah, they hate Saudi Arabia, and those guys are classic rivals.
Right.
So, Charles, Larry Nichols, in our most recent interview, he said that he felt the money that Barack Obama sent to Iran was somehow diverted to Russia and then used to pay for this Uranium One deal. Then Kevin Shipp said he didn't think that was correct.
Yeah, I don't know about that, and I will say this: there was a lot of chatter about William Campbell, the Uranium One informant. Been stories about how he has been debriefed by the FBI and how he has also been in talks with Congress, with the House, with the Senate. There hasn't been much since on that, and I believe that if Campbell's story goes back before 2009, when there was no lawful Clinton Global Initiative of any kind, though it operated starting in 2005, if he could tell inside tales on that of where money went, for what reasons, then I think that he's got a lot of very good things to talk about. One final point in the slides, back to Germany, this one here. There is, we had that picture of, Donald Trump being faced down by Angela Merkel in theory. And in fact, as we speak, I don't know what the resolution is, and maybe it's already been resolved, but it is possible that this is a gentleman who's standing up to Angela Merkel and saying, no, we're not going to have as many migrants as you want, no vetting coming into Germany. We're not doing that anymore. It didn't work.
Yeah, why would she want that? It makes no sense.
I don't know.
I mean, unless the goal is to, don't they say that one of the primary, goals of destabilizing a population is to inject a foreign culture and all that?
Yeah, I don't see that as working all that well in Germany. I mean,
no, I mean to destabilize Germany.
Right, I know, but I'm just saying Germany is, let's just say they're less tolerant of non-Germans, I would argue, than Americans are of non-Americans. I mean, I can't explain Angela Merkel's theory. I mean, she was raised in East Germany. Maybe that affects her thinking. And but the idea that Germany is going to face down the United States of America, something that didn't work too well in whenever the war started, 1914 to 1918, didn't work too well in 1941 to 1945. It's not going to work so well in 2018. And I say that as somebody whose ancestor or tail ancestor came from Prussia in 1853, so I'm allowed to make comments like that. And I think the theory of some of the German globalists was that they'll be the biggest country inside the EU, therefore they can claim disproportionate advantage in the EU, and then the EU will be the largest common market, so if there's a global government system, they can maybe have a lot more influence globally than they might otherwise have if they were just a country. But the German business model is to create these factories that are gigantic, to serve far more than Germany, as we've demonstrated in prior presentations.
Make a lot of cars.
And then legislate these unfair advantages, whereas if we want to send our cars into Germany, they could say, well, no, your cars aren't good enough. It's not a tariff. We just, obviously they're not as good as the German, so we can't let you sell them here. And we don't have to put up with that crap.
Yeah.
And we're not going to. And so Germany, I would argue, has a serious set of problems, demographic problems, in that their population is old and not growing. It has other problems in the makeup of their population. They have all these unvetted migrants who are not assimilating, who are not as well educated, causing friction. They've set up these plants on the assumption that they could dominate, they could sell a lot more outside Germany than they probably should be able to do. And they love bureaucracy, they love gigantic government systems inside Germany, they love the European bureaucracy, they love the UN bureaucracy, they're fundamentally bureaucrats.
Yeah.
And this is the age of disruption where bureaucracies are being disrupted. So bottom line, we're racing through here. This is a record presentation for us, Jason, on a hot day.
That's good.
But I think it is time for the people who have been studying in government, the IRS, Department of Justice, and foreign governments and state governments, it's time for them to just say, listen, we put Corinne Brown in prison for $800,000. This is $3 billion. We are putting Steve Stockman, a Republican, in prison. We don't yet know for how long, for $1.2 million. This is $3 billion, okay? And this isn't just, this $3 billion that we know about. We don't know how much money was sent towards the Clinton Foundation that's sitting in Mauritius or Panama or the Bahamas or the Caymans because it was skived off before it got to the Clinton Foundation. We don't know how many crooked deals are involved in the Clinton Global Initiative. We do know they claim over 3,000 commitments to action. Now, yeah, this is something that just came in.
Yeah, just came out last night. There's been quite a bit of talk about this already. This is actually quite a dense document, a 99-page search warrant. I don't know, I haven't seen that many.
It's several search warrants, actually.
Several, okay, there you go.
But if you go to page 9, I think there's something pretty amazing here. On the page is 9, yeah.
Yeah, it's confusing.
Paragraph 28.
Here we are.
All right, this is really, in addition, the FBI's preliminary forensic examination revealed that the target server had been configured for 2 other domains, @presidentclinton.com and wjcoffice.com. This is extremely significant.
Yeah.
And the reason, I'm not an expert on domains or servers, but what I have long marveled at, knowing very well how foundation grants work and the fact that you don't just get a money transfer into a foundation. There's a long back and forth of documents and discussion and negotiation. And we have seen so far none of that in any of the emails. We've seen no concern, donors, Clinton Foundation donors contacting the State Department to raise issues with the foundation. Seen none of that. And where you would see those type of communications is on these other domains, at PresidentClinton.com, and that's WilliamJClintonOffice.com. And I suspect there are other domains like this. Teneo, maybe Doug Bann has a special one, Abedin has one. So you're trying to cook a deal, right? You're not going to say you're not going to send an email to Hillary Clinton at secretarystate.gov or whatever the address is, saying, "Dear Secretary Clinton, I would like to break the following federal laws."
Right.
If I give you $1 million, what do I get back?
Right.
If I give you $2 million, you're not going to see that on .gov. But you are going to see that on ClintonEmail.com or PresidentClinton.com, and especially on at WJCOffice.com. Who knows how many other ones there are, but this is telling us that by September 11th, 2016, was it 16 or 15, Jason?
15.
15. At the very top of that, let's just double check that. Yeah, 15, by September 11th, 2015, the FBI had information that on this server right up there at the top of the page, this one right here, they had identified
Dell PowerEdge.
Whatever server that is, that they had by that date, September 11th, 2015, they had found that had been configured, that means to run email,
right,
at those addresses.
Yeah.
Okay, so
for me it was shocking because have we heard anything about those domains before that?
I don't know if we have or haven't. There's so much we've been through, but my point is this is September 11th, 2015. So we go back in the chronology, and there's quite a few other documents in this thing. I haven't read all of them, but you go back in the chronology. The criminal investigation into Hillary Clinton's mishandling of classified information was opened by the FBI on July 10th, 2015. That is, 3 months after she announced for president for the second time. Before they did the crooked deal with Perkins Coie to rig the Democratic primaries with the superdelegates in favor of Hillary Clinton in August of 2015.
Right.
This is happening by September 11th, 2015. And everyone's saying, well, McCabe had no motivation of any kind. There was no carrot, because he was only made deputy director of the FBI in February 1st, 2016. Rubbish. His wife was running for office in 2015 by this point here, and was encouraged by Terry McAuliffe. You have that information in the IG report that started in March of 2015. That Terry McAuliffe sought out McCabe's wife and said, you ought to think about running for whatever the seat was in Virginia.
State Senate in Virginia. Well, the other piece of that came from Scott Bennett saying that she was put up there by McAuliffe specifically to knock Senator Dick Black out of the box because Dick Black, like Michael Flynn, was calling out the nonsense in Syria, and they also did an operation that McCabe did a COINTELPRO operation to set up Dick Black in a meeting with some Free Syrian Army guy who was a terrorist, and then they were like, oh, he's meeting with a terrorist. So that's another one of the playbooks, is to trick you into something, to lure you into something, and then be like, oh, look what he did.
But I mean, this is from Josh Gerstein. Now look, this is August 26th, 2015. Date and time issued, August 26th, 2015. You were commanded to execute this warrant on or before September 11th, 2015. But the date it's signed is August 26th. Okay, so this is just about the same time, or 25th, 28th, 26th, whatever. Yeah, 20, but it's definitely August.
August, yeah.
Okay.
Oh wait, here, August 28th, 2015.
Right, 215. Yeah, there you go.
Huh.
Right. So I think it is past time for the investigators to go back in here and reconstruct the chronology. Now, the second thing, we talked about the IG report, remember, Jason, 18 USC 793?
Yes.
And we talked about how in the IG report they mentioned that the reason they didn't pursue a prosecution because they found they didn't see intent.
Yeah, but that's not actually what the law says.
Well, and these warrants talk about 18 USC 793 E and F. That's the basis upon which they're sworn out. E and F being particularly the one I would use, not being a lawyer. See, E and F right there, E and F. And they have the logic for why they're doing that. They get a warrant sworn out saying they have probable cause to believe these crimes were confirmed, occurred. They get the warrant sworn out, they search the server, and now the IG is saying, well, no reasonable prosecutor, whatever, blah, blah. Bullshit. Then how did they get the warrant? Right? And this is kind of like the opposite of the FISA stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Here's one where they asserted they had probable cause, they get the warrant, they search the server, they find classified information. In the various warrants, there's several cases explained. In one case, they find more than 2,000 classified emails.
Yeah.
Right? And Hillary all along in the campaign trail and debates, I neither sent nor received information. And it says in these warrants that the opposite's the case.
Well, but I think we should go back and listen to the exact words, because she's always super lawyery in how she talks. And then I didn't send or receive any classified email in my email.
No, the classified at the time that were marked classified at the time. This
right, so she had somebody take the marking up and then sent it.
But this refutes that. If you read these in specific terms, they go through.
18 USC 1001 on there. She's lying.
She a liar. But
Charles Arlen is watching us on 21st Century 3D's YouTube channel. It says, great presentation, many exclamation points. Thank you, Arlen.
Thank you. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating, Charles. Who released this? The FBI?
I guess the FBI. I'm not sure who released it, but Josh Gerstenstein at Politico wrote a piece with a link to it, and one of our friends. It
just came out last night, right?
Or maybe even this. I don't know when it came out, but this is treasure trove here. Treasure trove.
We'll include this in the links on the description of the video. And I am listening to the crowd, people who wanted to see the link to your presentation posted before we start so that they can follow along. And I need to figure out how to make that happen on 21st Century 3D as well. As I said, we're experimenting, of course, with the 21st Century 3D YouTube channel having sort of a simultaneous stream, so people can see us on Jason Goodman and also on 21st Century 3D. And I'm just testing out Super Chat on there, where everybody's got a different personal preference for how they like to support the show. But 21st Century 3D is a channel from my previous corporation. And of course, Crowdsource the Truth is simply a brand name for a product. There's someone who's brought a malicious, frivolous lawsuit against me, claiming that Crowdsource the Truth is not a corporation and therefore people shouldn't pay it. I've never claimed that Crowdsource the Truth is a corporation. It's like, the Whopper is a hamburger and Burger King is a corporation. So don't pay the Whopper. What else have we got to look at here, Charles?
I think that about wraps it up.
We've covered quite a lot today, I have to say. It's always exciting to see what shenanigans the Clintons are up to. And again, I do want to thank our really generous sponsors. The monthly sponsorships always sort of close out on the last day of the month, and we had a lot of people join us in June, which was fantastic. We really need the ongoing sponsorship to keep going. Going to be in Washington, D.C. In July, going to be in Chicago as well. I'm looking into going to visit Field McConnell, so definitely would encourage people to become sponsors at patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And people who don't want to sign up for a recurring sponsorship can make a one-time sponsorship payment by going to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. youtube.com/crowdsource the truth. There are a lot of people who don't trust payments over the internet, and they can email me for the address. Bitcoin has been tumbling, so people who want to unload that asset might want to point their browser at this QR code, and you can just boing, point your phone at that and send Bitcoin to Crowdsource the Truth. And Charles, it's really been a pleasure today going over this material with you. I really think we're getting close. Now, so this Wednesday is the 4th of July, right?
Right.
Perhaps you'll take a break to celebrate the birth of our nation and maybe not close in on that day?
I think the national holiday is probably a good day to not close in. Close in on a hot dog. Maybe,
right,
and
I'm going to continue to post the 90 Seconds with Charles Ortel segments, get those up to speed. We shot a few of those, and we're going to release those over time. But thank you for joining me as always, Charles. Fantastic presentation. I want to thank everybody for watching. We've got over 1,230 viewers on YouTube right now, so that's always great. And I want to thank everybody for watching. I will see you tomorrow.